Hello everyone and welcome to Takagi-san Season 3 First Impressions Episode 5. I don't have time to make fun of the name because oh my god, this episode is so good. It's so good. First and foremost, we get an adaptation of a bonus chapter, commonly referred to as Nishikata-chan, and that's Chi. That's Chi from the Moto series as a middle schooler, giving us proper confirmation that the Moto series and the general future chapters of the manga are now canon to the anime. It also gives us our second glimpse of adult Takagi, the first one we've had since Camping Trip in Season 2. As excited as I was to see this chapter get adapted, it has given me cause for concern. I've already discussed that the running theme of this season so far has been relationships. So I was hoping for a finale that would resolve that theme the way Summer Festival did for Season 2's hand-holding motif. However, the fact that they're teasing adult Takagi and her child here, and the fact that Chi's name isn't mentioned in the adaptation, means that we could be getting memories as the season finale. Now, that would technically resolve the theme of relationships. Being married with a child is a hell of a relationship, but I think it would feel kind of cheap. It would essentially be skipping forward a dozen years and saying, see, it works out in the end. When what I want to see is where the switch from friend to romance happens. However, there is always the possibility that I was wrong about relationships being the running theme. Something about transitioning from adult Takagi to the OP that starts with young child Takagi makes me wonder if the running theme might instead be past and future. We know that a high school adaptation is coming given how seriously the references to it are in the OP. So maybe that's what this season is going for? After the OP we get an adaptation of Chapter 96, Dislikes. This part of the episode is pretty general apart from a couple of details. Firstly, I love that Nishikata blushes when he thinks that Takagi is on the same page as him. I don't think we've ever seen him blush over camaraderie before, and it carries some pretty interesting implications as to how he really feels about Takagi. The second comes at the end, when Takagi says she'll cook some tasty green peppers for Nishikata someday, and he quietly says, "No peppers please," to himself. The fact that he initially reacted to the idea of Takagi cooking for him with "that'll never happen" tells us that a relationship is not something on his mind at this point in his life. But the line at the end implies that his mind has been opened to the possibility of having Takagi cook for him at least. I have nothing to say about the B-plot. Literally less than usual. It's just there. It has Nishikata, Takeo and Kimura in it, but it's still just there. Besides, we've got more important stuff to get to. The following story is an anime original and doesn't appear to have a title, so I'm just going to call it Audition for the sake of this video and future analysis. This story can be a little hard to watch at times, as it focuses on the B-plot trio being louder and more obnoxious than usual. But as always, there are some interesting points to be made. First of all, the fact that Takagi is immediately given the role of princess confirms a suspicion that was given to us during Camping Trip. Takagi is rather popular among her peers. I don't think it's a coincidence that the best audition before Nishikata's was given by the same guy we saw Takagi having fun dancing with during the line dance. Secondly, we have our second mention of a culture festival and an acknowledgement that it is coming up soon. And now that we know our characters will be putting on a play, it's safe to say that we are 100% getting a culture festival story, even if it's just this play. Of course, the one aspect that absolutely elevates this story is Nishikata's audition, where he plays out Takagi's ultimate fantasy and makes her feel like an actual princess. Even though it started awkwardly, Nishikata is really selling it by the end, giving the impression that he isn't so much acting as letting something out that he's kept covered up. This gets derailed by Kimura scooping up the prince role, but it's enough to leave Takagi momentarily flustered. But this leads to a conversation about the season overall. Every episode, except arguably episodes 1 and 2, has had a moment that one could call a critical hit. Episode 1 had it happen in a dream, so it probably doesn't count, and the sunset scene in episode 2 probably doesn't count either, but episode 3 had Nishikata returning for her, episode 4 had Nishikata offer to walk her home at night, and now episode 5 has the audition scene. What is the point of having so many potential critical hit moments, especially when we aren't getting the reaction we're used to? Well, it's like I said before, it's telling us that Nishikata and Takagi are growing up, that Nishikata is catching Takagi off guard with his emotional growth more often, and that if we are going to have a classic critical hit moment in this season, it's going to have to be something big. We then bring it home with an adaptation of the manga's 89th chapter, Fishing. We all knew this was coming from the trailer, but that doesn't subtract from just how pleasant this story is. It's nice to see these two just hang out and do something as peaceful as fishing. An observation that Takagi makes and Nishikata agrees with. It also makes a nice companion piece to Skipping Stones, because we found out in that story that Nishikata has an instinctive desire to keep Takagi safe, and here we find out that the instinct is reciprocal. Takagi stepping up to ground Nishikata is absolutely an instinctual reaction. We can tell by the way she jumps back upon realizing what she is doing. As well as being a really cute moment, it shows us that Takagi's care for Nishikata goes beyond just wanting him to be happy, as we have seen before. This is the most direct action we have ever seen her take to showcase her care for him, and it was on an instinctual level. You know, something occurred to me while writing this script. A reason I have for loving this show as much as I do. Let me ask you something. Does Nishikata care about Takagi? If you're a viewer of mine, you probably answered, well, duh, of course he does. But how do you prove that? Where do we find the moment in the show where Nishikata says, I care about Takagi? The answer is that he doesn't say it. He lives it. We know he cares about Takagi because he once went out of his way to prevent their separation. He once threw himself into a river in her place. He once called off one of his schemes because it was mistaken for a genuinely kind gesture. And he was so certain that walking her home at night was the right thing to do that it didn't even occur to him to be embarrassed. One of my biggest pet peeves with anime is the lack of faith some of them have in their audience to infer simple things. I couldn't analyze My Hero Academia the way I do this show because MHA completely lacks subtlety. Takagi-san, on the other hand, trusts the audience to pick up on what it's trying to do. This is why I called out the flashback to Takagi walking by the classroom in episode 3. I thought it was a sign of the show losing its subtlety. I was wrong. Karakai Jouzo no Takagi-san continues to delight me with its tone, endear me with its characters, and engage me with the way it progresses its plot, and trusts me to pick up on the unsaid aspects of its narrative. That's all I got for this first impressions video. I'd like to thank my patrons, Orion Tran, Lars Espen, Data52, Jaman5, Lemon Shark, Pixcalibur, Alberto Cruz, Tyler Bennett, Tenka, Jeremy Pashik, Fireclaw, Soren, Christopher Wang, Will, Mario, and Luke Stewart. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.